Hello, hello, my beautiful, wonderful seekers and finders. Welcome, welcome to the Way of Truth number 20. My name is Artem Boytsov. I am a spiritual teacher, and this is my website. So feel free to check it out. I post some writings about the spiritual path there, and this is our bi-weekly broadcast that I host with myself and my students, and everyone is free to participate. We discuss all matters of the spirituality. I give guidance. If you wish to speak to me, ask your questions about practice or about life, then please, by all means, I invite you to post your questions in comments, or, which would be even better, if you could join our broadcast and participate live. I'm about to post a comment. So our broadcasts are transmitted, broadcast. So our satsangs are broadcast on both YouTube and Facebook. And I just posted this comment to both of these platforms. If you follow this link, you will be able to come to the broadcast and actually speak to me over video. So I highly encourage that, because I would be able to ask questions. It's somewhat more challenging to answer questions without context. But if for whatever reason you don't want to show your face or publicly, or engage in live video interactions, please just post a comment and I will read it. I will bring it up to my screen and I will answer it. So I'm also trying iPhone continuity web camera right now. So I look a little different from the previous broadcast. Let me know if you like it more, if you like it less. It's kind of an experiment. So we have one person in the guest room right now. His name is Alex. Alex, I will bring you up after I address some of the questions from my channel, Question for Artem. And so before I do that, I would also like you to consider joining our Discord community. So let me also post a link to this. So this is a link. We have a Discord community. It's a wonderful, active community. People provide each other support, help each other in the spiritual path, and there's a channel there which is called Questions for Artem, where you can post questions to me. It has a little bit of a backlog. So traditionally, what I do in the beginning of the satsangs is to address a couple of questions from the backlog, and then I will bring any live guests on stage if they come, or I will address the comments that you guys post to YouTube and Facebook. So please, while I'm doing this, feel free to post your comments or join the meeting live. So let me go ahead. Okay. So on September 10th, Mahima is asking, is physical intimacy our primary need to survive? Can we live our life to its fullest and aliveness without ever engaging in physical intimacy? I wasn't provided physical intimacy since childhood from my mother, and rather was physically hit and vitally shamed. Even had some abusive experiences. This led me to avoid them, and I don't enjoy them. There is resistance towards it. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mahima, for this question. I'm very sorry to hear about that. So I probably wouldn't put it as extremely as the need to survive. But physical intimacy, especially with parents, is certainly unquestionably an important need for healthy psychological development. Absolutely. There is no question about it. And it has been shown, actually, not just as it became obvious from my own experience, because I'm also a child that has not been touched enough. So my family was very cold. There wasn't a lot of physical contact. And well, in my family, people didn't even say "I love you" to each other. So, leave alone any kind of affectionate, loving physical contact. Of course, there were some in the early childhood. I mean, in the very early childhood, we all get at least some of it, but we don't get nearly enough. So it's not only from my own experience, but even from the scientific experiments, it has clearly shown. Probably one of the most famous scientific experiments to this regard is um, I forgot the right word, like the wire mother or something like that. So they basically, it's, of course, it's an unethical experiment, but they took a baby monkey, and they I think that they put two uh, uh, puppets, so to say, of a mother. So not a real mother, but one was basically just a wireframe with a bottle of milk, and another was a furred uh, doll, so to speak. So it had no milk, it had no food, but it had fur. And a baby monkey would drink the milk from the wire mother, and then it would jump, it would go to the furred mother for comfort. So we are born to seek comfort, protection, and warmth from the parents. It's extremely important. It's a part of our development as children, and if we don't get it, then we feel threatened and alone and unsafe, and uh, all sorts of insecurities and troubles can come from that. So leave alone the fact that actually the reason that we don't get it is not because we have a furred uh, doll for a parent, but the reason that we usually don't get it is because the parents aren't quite healthy themselves. So it is absolutely healthy for a parent to want to spend a lot of time with the child, to cuddle with the child, caress the child, lots of physical contact. So if the parent, for one reason or another, stops doing that when the child is still very young, uh, then rest assured there is much more psychological, mental, mind unease and trouble in the parent's mind than just simply not touching the child. So there will probably also be some neglect. There will probably also be some aggression. There will probably also be some abuse. Maybe not in extreme forms, but at least some. So it doesn't surprise me that it was also part of your experience. The impulse to be physically intimate with the child is so natural and so strong, and both the parent and the child have it. And if the parent, for whatever reason, isn't drawn to that, then it's certainly not the only issue. So yes, I wouldn't say it's important for survival. I mean, you can survive without that, right? So people survive all sorts of stuff. It's certainly traumatizing, and it's certainly something that will need to be healed, and it will be addressed. And I myself cried rivers of tears over this, and I have always been sort of very much seeking physical comfort. So maybe in your case, the amount of probably what the so I stopped to think for a little while because I wanted to differentiate between the different types of responses. So that's interesting. I spoke to some people, so including you and my wife, for whom the physical intimacy feels somewhat threatening, right? So people feel uncomfortable with physical intimacy. For me, it wasn't exactly this way. So I've been seeking, I've been yearning physical intimacy. So I suspect that it has to do with the amount of abuse and how it's connected to physical intimacy. So, for example, if you are only touched when something bad is about to happen, or if you touched, for example, as a child, but the parents are very unpredictable. So one moment you can be touched and be intimate with, and another you will get berated, or you will get abused, or you will get insulted. Then the avoidance, the fear of physical intimacy stems from this fear of punishment or some sort of repercussion. So on some level, you kind of don't trust that this person who wants to touch you means well to you. See, and this is of course very, very sad when it happens, and it's manifested as a bodily response, as a bodily experience. So like, for example, I know this from the experience of living with my wife, who has oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, a very similar reaction to physical intimacy and touch. So it feels somewhat unsafe, somewhat threatening to her. So in my case, it wasn't the case. I guess it was probably because we weren't touched at all, pretty much as children. So I don't have this specific association. And so I sort of, through the course of my life, I've always sort of been yearning to compensate for that. So I've always been sort of very touchy-feely. But it can happen like exactly how you described too, right? So there's a sense of danger, there's a sense of unease with the physical intimacy if it was followed or intertwined with other abusive behaviors. So yes, it is important, and actually there are even some somatic healing modalities which explore that. So I am of course not an expert in that, but there are people who are quite skilled at loving touch, healing through touch. And oftentimes people who experience it cry afterwards. So that is something, of course, to be explored, both the desire and yearning for the physical intimacy, and the fear of it, the associations of danger. So explored, obviously, in a safe environment with someone good willing. I sympathize with you. It's very difficult, but to answer your question, it's very important for development. Yes, of course. Okay, let me look at another one. So on September 16th, ERNG, Earnage, has posted this question. So I don't know if it's I don't know the pronouns. So they write, Artem, what are your thoughts about becoming a monk temporarily? And what are your thoughts about shamans and shamanism? Although some of them, having worked with psychedelics their whole life, still put emphasis on the plant spirit and human soul and other examples that seem like going deeper into a dream. Even famous experienced psychonauts talk about the same stuff and doesn't seem to have noticed the non-dual aspect. Why is there a difference for people seemingly doing the same practices, for some resulting in dissolving the ego, but for others getting stuck or even going deeper into the dream? Some people can meditate and do psychedelics their whole life, but still be stuck in the dream. Thank you, Artem. Great question. Very true. Yes, there are people who meditate for decades and decades, and there are people who do psychedelics for all of their life and don't get enlightened. Uh, there, it's not as easy, as simple, I would say. So it's not as simple as simply doing a specific practice. Uh, that's why good guidance is very important, and that's why still up to this day, working with a deeply realized spiritual teacher is the fastest way to making the realization, because uh, whatever practice you follow, however good a book that you're reading, uh, or however good your intellect is or intellectual comprehension is, however well you understand the instructions from a book, you will necessarily misinterpret some. You see, if you didn't misinterpret uh, any spiritual guidance, you wouldn't need any spiritual guidance. You see, so the role of a teacher, the role of a guru or a master, and of course, not everyone likes these terms, uh, but the role is to actually point you towards misinterpretation, to clear them up, right? There was I read an interesting story some time ago. I have pretty bad memories for this stuff, so I don't remember who. I don't remember the context, but basically, uh, one time a student asked the teacher, like, "How come you say one thing to another person and then another thing to another person, right? How come you say one thing to one person and then another thing to another person? That's very confusing. You're very inconsistent." And he said, like, imagine you just walking on the path with your eyes closed, and then you start veering left into a ditch, and I shout, right, right, go right. And then you continue going on the path, and then you start veering right into the forest, and I shout, left, left, go left. So basically, the value of a good guidance is being able to pinpoint uh, and clear up the mistakes that you're making. That's the value, and the skill of doing so comes exclusively from making the same mistakes, basically. So to the extent that I can guide you, or to the extent that I can show you where you're not going to the right direction, or what needs to be corrected in your practice, to the extent that I can do that, the extent that I can do this is exactly the extent to which I made the same mistakes. So everyone makes mistakes in the spiritual path. You can even look at the spiritual path as a very long and unpleasant sequence of mistakes. Adyashanti once said, spirituality is being proven wrong again and again and again and again. That's very right. That's very true. Actually, that's very true. And so it's no surprise that some people can meditate for decades and some people can do psychedelics for decades and still not have, as you say, the non-dual realization. Shamanism as a phenomenon is absolutely unsurprising. So basically, shamans, I mean, they had some experiences, they have some understanding, but their understanding is very limited most of the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't be shamans. So outside of guidance, because it would also be incorrect to say that you only can get enlightened with guidance. This is also not true. So outside of guidance, the most important factor is intent. And the problem with intent is that almost all intent, except intent for truth, is somewhat corrupted. So it gets you stuck in various places. So if you intend to know the divine, you intend for love, you intend for peace, even intent for healing, believe it or not, can be a hindrance. The highest intent, the intent that can take you all the way, is intent for truth. Above all else, above everything else. So at some point of time, invariably, it will feel like truth becomes more important than your very life. And it's an illusion in some way, because you don't lose your life in enlightenment, the ego does. But while you identify with the ego, for the ego, enlightenment is death, and it's extremely scary. So the desire to know truth, the desire to live in truth, the desire to be in truth, must be the driving factor of your spiritual journey if you don't want to get stuck. And more important than anything else. Everything else is a consequence of truth, not the other way around. Love is a consequence of truth. Peace is a consequence of truth. Equanimity is a consequence of truth. So a lot of people put the cart in front of the horse, right? So they try to develop love, or they try to develop equanimity, or they try to develop peace. But none of these things can be developed, actually. All of these things manifest effortlessly, as spontaneously, as a consequence of truth. So that's why, as I often say, honesty, self-honesty especially, is such an important thing to develop. So there is no surprise that there are a lot of meditators, psychedelics users, psychonauts, yes. Terence McKenna is a good example. Shamans who have been doing spiritual practices for decades and years, and their insight is still very limited. Now, with regards to the first part of your question about becoming a monk, it is... it's not a... It's kind of the same with regards to with what we've described with meditation and psychedelics. So just becoming a monk, or being amongst other monks, or living your life as a monk in itself is of course not enough. Monks, just like shamans, aren't enlightened. They're on the way. By the way, when I was speaking about all of that previously, it does not mean to say that you cannot learn something from a shaman, or you cannot learn something from a psychonaut, or you cannot learn something from a person who have had a lot of meditation experience and is a very proficient and experienced meditator. The truth is so large, so multifaceted, and so rich. Anyone who has seen some aspect of it, some facet of it, can help you see the same aspect and the same facet. It even applies to people who are who didn't make any insight at all, but just through the virtue of having experienced, like some more elderly people, for example, can be very wise, and they may not know about spirituality at all, but just through the virtue of having lived through a lot and having seen a lot, they started changing their perspective. And you can learn something from anyone, pretty much. And when they're telling you something that you intuited to be true, it just kind of clicks, like, yes, it is true. And there could be many people in your life, regardless of where they are in the spiritual path, they could say something that you would be like, yes, this is very true. How come I didn't see it before so clearly? So it is not to say that you cannot learn. And of course, if you go to a monastery and live with the monks, you will be surrounded by people who have some practice, some insight. Maybe their head monk or whatever also has some insight. Not always. The degrees to which they can help you or be good guides would vary tremendously. The most important thing that I think you would be getting out of it, if you wanted to do it, is just having the time and external circumstances to really focus on your meditation practice. So, because it can be very difficult to combine meditation practice, especially when it gets very hard, when it gets very emotional, when it gets very energetically taxing. It's very difficult to combine it with a day job, for example, and especially intense, long meditation practice. If you're like very, very much committed to the spiritual path, that then you might be seeking an environment when you can spend a significant amount of time in solitude and dedicate this time to your practice. So monasteries can provide an environment like that. Not everything in it would be conducive to it. There will still be, some discipline and some misunderstandings, and of course, but at least it is something. That is actually the historical function of the monastery. So the historic function of the monastery is to provide an environment for the real function is to provide an environment to a serious seeker so that they could actually focus on the spiritual practice. Provide ample time, reduce the distractions of the world, reduce the temptations of the world, reduce the incessant, continuous social interactions that also makes it more difficult to spend time in deep meditation, to focus on yourself. Provide solitude. So it's a possibility that it could be beneficial. Sure. Right. So I didn't have to do it. I had enough savings and I had my own house, so I could spend a few years in my own house living off my savings. But a lot of people don't have that. I was very lucky. It's a sort of a luxurious position to be in. So yeah, I also wanted to mention in your question, like you said, that even going deeper into the dream, things like that. So this is not strictly speaking what happens. Those people, you see, during the unfolding of the dream, you actually go through the layers of the dream. So going deeper into the dream the way that you phrased it is actually spiritual progress. So most of the people who are realized to one extent or the other, and insightful to one extent or the other, but not enlightened, they are closer to reality than people who completely identify with the ego. It may feel like from the outside that they are going deeper into the dream, but you cannot get to reality without going through all the layers of the dream. So they're actually shedding some layers of the dream. So and on some layers of dreaming, yes, there are some ideas that would that can be perceived as more delusional than, for example, what a dreaming identified person would say in the separate state. And there's a very, like, this strange paradox that a complete enlightenment and complete non-enlightenment are very similar from the outside, and only the path, the transitioning, as you go through the transformation, then it becomes very sort of unusual, and these people are easily recognized. So the people who embody unconditional love are easily recognized. The people who are stuck in emptiness are easily recognized, and the completely enlightened person is not easily recognized at all. So there is some kind of paradox and a profound joke in that. But if we're talking about these people in the intermediate stages, regardless of how deep it is, it doesn't mean that they're kind of further departing from the dream, or sorry, from reality, or like going deeper into the dream. No, spiritual practice, especially done for many years and in non-trivial amounts, it tends to dissolve the dream. It just happens much slower than people realize, and the ego is much more complex and deceitful and multi-layered. The path is longer than most people realize. This is true, but it doesn't mean that they're going to the opposite direction. That's not true. Okay. Okay, so I addressed a couple of questions. I have some comments, and I also have Alex here. Okay, let me address some comments from the audience. Before I do, some obligatory things that I would like to ask you. So first of all, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share it. It really helps us. It really helps us grow our channel. It helps me to reach more people that might need guidance. Now, I will also post a comment. If you wish to support our work, please, you can go to this page, and you can support us on Patreon. You can send us a one-time or monthly PayPal donations. This is all very highly appreciated. We still, I'm still living off my savings. There's not much that I earn from this. So I would appreciate it very much. And then you can also schedule a one-on-one meeting with me if you wish. I will also post. So if you follow this link on Calendly, you can schedule a one-on-one meeting with me. If you don't have any, if you're broke, if you don't have any ability to pay, that's totally fine. There's an option to schedule a free meeting, and a big range of different options for people with different incomes. And then finally, we're also doing retreats. There's a possibility that there will be a retreat in Costa Rica in late February, early March. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, and we will put you on the list of people to contact. There will also be one in California in May. So if you're interested in any of those, please reach out to me. You can look at on our Facebook page for photo reports and reviews from previous retreats. It's a wonderful experience for everybody, and I cannot stress this enough. A living physical presence is very different from text, is very different from video, is a completely different experience. And I live in Redwood City, so if you wish to come meet me. It would be my pleasure. All right, so let me take a look at the questions that I have. Okay, I like it just the same. I think it was about the camera. Okay, AEL 9730 says, "Hi Artem, could you please talk about night dreams after self-realization?" I have been lucid dreaming a lot. Is it something to pay attention to? Thank you. Yes, that's a great question. So a few things happen after self-realization with regards to night dreams. First of all, many people report, most people notice, and it was my experience, and it was my wife's experience, and experience of many of my students, is that night dreams become more vivid and emotional. So they sort of become more intense in some ways. So the emotional processing, the excavation of suppressed emotion, the reevaluation, the processing of our past trauma, the dissolution of the ego, those are all the same thing, continues to happen in night dreams. And so the night dreams can become very emotional. Night dreams can become very intense. There could be sort of very strange, disturbing experiences in the night dreams. Like, for example, you could begin dying in night dreams. Or I've had so many strange experiences. Or like you can look in someone's eyes and have this strange feeling that this person is you. Like, for example, I had an experience where I would in a night dream where I would walk by someone, and the face would look very familiar, and I would be like, "You look very familiar. You look very familiar." And I would look at this person's eyes, and I would realize this is me. And at this point, the dream would dissolve, and I would become aware during the dream. So awareness, consciousness begins to penetrate night dreams slowly, but it starts to happen. So you say lucid dreaming a lot. So you becoming aware in dreams. So just like you have become aware of the dream of the ego during the waking hours, now you start becoming aware of the dream during night. So it always first happens during waking hours. So reality is first seen during waking hours. There's a very, very simple reason for that, because during waking hours you actually have the actual reality also. So like you have something to touch, you have something to see, right? During the night, the senses are not active, and so the mind are unencumbered. The mind kind of has no restriction to create reality. Like during the waking hours, the mind distorts reality with its perception, but it is somewhat limited, right? If you take a lot of psychedelics, then the distortion would be very serious. It would be very apparent. It would stop being limited. But sober, the distortion is still limited by the senses, right? So you can look at a person and imagine, sorry, not imagine, and like perceive him or her to be a certain way. You can look at an object and perceive it to be threatening, even though the object is completely benign. But with very rare exceptions, you will somehow at least maintain, the same visual appearance of the object. You cannot like completely change it or distort it in a very significant way. During the night, there is no limitation. So the mind creates the whole universe, basically. The mind creates the whole scenery. Right. So it's deeper. It is the time during the dreams. It is the time when the mind is free to dream. And if you look at the dreams are almost always about some unprocessed things that still need to be resolved. So it's either about some things that happened in the past, or they're about some anxieties about the future, or maybe some hopes about the future, maybe some desires about the future. So they're all about desires. That's why, for example, it's very common to have sexual dreams. I mean, people who study dreams, if I remember correctly, then a lot of dreams are negative. That's completely normal to have negative dreams. So we are reliving our past traumas. We sort of seeking a resolution for past traumatic experiences. Sexual fantasies are also very common in dreams. So those are the themes of unresolved trauma and suppression. And even if the dream is about the future, if it's a hopeful dream or if it's an anxious dream about that is sort of more about the fantasies or what you want your life to be, it is still informed by the past and the suppression. So dreaming is basically continued meditation. At a certain point of the spiritual path, sleep and meditation just merge into one experience. So there's no really separating the two. They feel completely the same. So after about 2-3 years, like maybe even less, like very shortly, basically after my self-realization, taking a nap and meditating for 2 hours just became completely indistinguishable. I would not lose awareness during taking the nap. I would continue to be conscious, and I would just see the same sort of dreams and hallucinations and experiences that I would have in meditation. It took much longer for the long sort of extended night dream to become quite like that, because like there's much more time, so there's much more opportunity to get lost in the dream completely and become unconscious, and it happens, and it still happens from time to time. But the less unconsciousness you carry, the more conscious you tend to become in dreaming, during dreaming, the more aware. So the more lucid the dreams become, and the less also phantasmagoric, visual, intense, emotional they become. So the intense, beautiful, extreme experiences in dreams and the intense, beautiful, extreme experiences in meditation are of the same nature. If you're an experienced meditator and you are self-realized, then it's perfectly possible, and you probably will experience at some point the not only fear and other things, but also the beautiful things like oneness, infinite space, infinite consciousness in during night, in night dreams. So I've experienced pretty much everything that I experienced in meditation. I also experienced in night dreams. So they're fundamentally the same experience. Also, what you will tend to notice is that the deeper you go on the spiritual path, the more the contents of the night dreams becomes much less about long-standing traumas or blockages or issues from the past that need to be resolved. Like, for example, I would have recurring dreams of ending up back in the army. So it was very difficult, a traumatic experience, and I kind of had resolving dreams. Oh, but I've already been there. Why am I here? Can I leave? And I would just have those would be quite common before enlightenment, and it continued for some time. Now I don't remember the last time that I had this dream. So basically, the deeper you go on the spiritual path, the less the dream tend to revolve around long lasting issues from the past, and more about basically the recent events of the day. So the sort of your life persona and your dream persona, I mean, I wouldn't say persona, but basically the real you and the dream you, they become closer and closer and closer. So the sort of gap between the imagined you that is having the dream experience and just the same imagined you that is having meditation experiences, and the real you that is living this life, it sort of becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, smaller and smaller and smaller. So a lot of very strange things happen in night dreams and meditation. So from my perspective, there is absolutely no difference between sleeping and meditation. So both are basically just rest for the body, but the mind is hyperactive. So the mind, with the exception of deep sleep, the mind continues to imagine. The mind continues to imagine and believe, and you continue witnessing the mind. So that's why the dreaming ultimately becomes meditation, and it becomes lucid, because you maintain the witness, the same witness that you maintain in meditation during the night. And you basically just continue. The body's relaxed. You might not be aware of the body, both in meditation and in dreaming, but you continue witnessing the mind, and witnessing its arguments, its dramas, it's revisiting the past trauma, it's being anxious of the future, and feeling everything. And so the deeper you go in the path, the less you sort of identify with the character, and the more you are able to simply witness what's going on. And of course, if it's in the context of the dream night, the night dream, then that's exactly what lucidity is. That's exactly what lucid dreaming is, when you don't completely identify with the character, but you maintain some presence of independent witness. So it's very similar. And the only difference is depth. Like, as I said, during the night, lots of time, no senses, so it's somewhat easier to get lost. And but there's nothing wrong with it, because also, like, getting lost and identifying with the persona is also how we experience the continued suffering and emotional difficulty and energetic difficulty of the persona. So night dreams becoming very emotional is actually a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So the other thing that tends to happen is that, precisely because the night dream become very emotional and becomes continued practice, the most difficult part of the day is oftentimes the morning, when you sort, because you just had a sort of a long meditation experience, lots of emotion came up, maybe some unresolved things still linger, and as I said previously, reality is always first found in the waking state. So there is some time, needs to be some time to sort of process the kind of aftertaste of the dreaming, to come back to reality. And this can be very emotional. Like, for example, with me, and again, I heard this from other people too, like, I would, after self-realization, I would, for example, after dreaming, I would very often cry, or like, I would wake up in the morning in a state of consciousness which isn't as clear as it could have been. So there's some kind of morning grogginess or some aftertaste of the emotional experience that I had during the night dreams, and it would take some time to actually work through it, cry, or have some sort of emotional experience to come back to be firmly grounded in reality. And of course, I also had all sorts of very intense emotional experiences during dreaming. So I cried and wept, and there was anger and hatred and lots of stuff. So treat sleep as a long meditation, my friends. And if you can't fall asleep, just meditate. So the body rests the same. That's why also I said the same. I say it many times. It's the same experience. The body rests the same. So just meditate. And also, it's the same reason that I say, if in meditation you get lost in meditation and you sort of lose the witness and you get lost in the experience, that's also okay. Just like during the night, you see. And it's also okay if you get lost in the experience of the psychedelic trip. I mean, you can't really force witnessing. You see, that's also an important aspect of it. Like if you try to force witnessing, you will just disallow yourself of having the needed emotional healing, releasing experience. You know, the witness grows by itself. The strength of the witness grows with every experience you have, because we tend to get lost in the experience when the experience is very intense. So when the experience is very intense, if you try to kind of become the witness of it again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to escape this intensity. The more the witness grows, the less intense, the more bearable, the more like kind of, oh, that's okay. I'm just watching this story and feeling some feelings. The easier it becomes. So just like we get lost in night dreams, we get lost in meditation, we get lost in psychedelic trips. Also, that's okay. That's okay. So just like I described during the mornings after meditation, it will take some time, and you will get back again. So don't be afraid to be lost in experience, neither in meditation nor in night dreams. Okay, I should do a separate talk about night dreams. It is such an interesting topic, and there are so many things to cover, and I should write it down also. Okay, Claudio is asking on the dangers of the spiritual path in the case when one might have unresolved traumas. That's always the case. Someone I know made a distinction between waking up and growing up healing. Can you talk about this, please? Yes. So, so basically, it's the same as in my language. It's the same as the difference between awakening, self-realization, and enlightenment. So, in my language, enlightenment is complete healing, growing up, basically. Waking up. That's why I say that what most people would describe as enlightenment is only the beginning of the spiritual path. It's not the end. Even sahaja samadhi, the effortless samadhi, is only the beginning of the spiritual path. So waking up kind of means either finding an impersonal witness, or if it's deeper, what I would call self-realization, disidentifying with the ego and instead identifying with the totality of the experience. So you can say identifying with the consciousness. So consciousness, or the totality of your experience, all of your experience becomes your identity, which is kind of at this point the same as no identity. And you no longer identify with the ego. At this stage, there's still a lot of ego. It just exists as it's not identified with it. It exists as a sort of process in consciousness. So the growing up, the healing, is what happens afterwards as consciousness begins to automatically explore all the traumas, the hidden, rejected parts of yourself, and begins to explore all the parts of your experience. And that happens in meditation. It happens in dreams, just like we described. It happens in psychedelic trips. So the interesting thing is that for most people, actually, what happens after awakening with regards to the depth of emotion and the depth of pain, and also, of course, there's compassion for everyone, and people start feeling other people's pain. There's a lot of things that happen. Is much greater, is much stronger than before. But the ego is very deceitful. The ego cannot see itself, and the ego also cannot does not want to go away. So the deepest, actually, misconception in spirituality, the most important misconception in spirituality that I see all the time, is that awakening or self-realization or disidentification with the ego is enlightenment, and then there's no more work to do. So the reality is that it's only the beginning of the authentic spiritual path. Like before that, there was just all fun and games. Not to say that it's not important, that it's not painful, that practice is not needed, but the after self-realization, if you don't get stuck, the practice greatly intensifies. And so this growing up healing is actually it's much more important part of the spiritual path than finding consciousness awareness. That's why I'm usually critical of the teachings that only point to consciousness and nothing else, when the main focus of the teaching is to actually find this consciousness, find this awareness. And I've also been noticing that more mature teachers, such as like Osho, Adyashanti, and stuff like that, and people like that, they tend to speak about this growing up healing journey. They tend to speak about the human much more than they tend to speak about consciousness. And I'm the same, because consciousness, awareness, there's not to say about them, and they're always here. What's important is the spiritual transformation of the human. So this growing up healing is actually the bulk of the spiritual path. Moreover, the way that I view it is that it's the entirety of the spiritual path. It's just that at a certain stage of healing, this witness, this impersonal witness, because it's also you, invariably appears, right? And that's what is experienced as awakening or self-realization. It's a massive shift, but too much importance is placed on this shift. The reality is that there could be a person that has never had this shift, but they could be much more kinder, more understanding, and more chill than a person who had only recently had this shift, and they still have a lot of healing to do. So there are a lot of people who had this shift and who are still very angry, vengeful. A lot of them use spiritual language for expression of their aggression, so they become very spiritual. And this is very, very sad and very tragic, because the spiritual language is a sort of a noble language. So to be deceived, to be lied to about in spiritual language is kind of, the ultimate betrayal. But unfortunately, that happens. This actually happens to pretty much everyone, just to various degrees. So everyone at one point of another develops spiritual ego or enlightened ego, is because the ego, as Adi said, the ego is the ultimate shape shifter. That's what it is. So once the worldly attachment of the ego is seen to be empty, then the ego starts, like, just moves. Basically, it moves its attachment towards the spiritual sphere, and then it moves its aggression towards the spiritual sphere also. And so like, whereas before, like the anger or vengefulness or bitterness, they were about, who got which toy, or who is more beautiful or sexy, and who earns more money. Now it becomes who's ignorant and who's enlightened and who's pure and who's, I don't know, dark and things like that. So this growing up healing part is the most important part, actually. And you say, in case when one might have unresolved traumas, the ego is unresolved trauma, basically. Like, if you have an ego, you cannot not have unresolved traumas. So the whole path is about healing, is about opening up to our pain, is about learning to stay with it, and seeing what lies it hides behind it. Okay. Hajar is asking, is there any situation where punishing a child, creating emotional and physical consequences for their actions, ever justified, excluding direct physical danger? No. I mean, you have to understand what the difference is between punishment and what you can say like prevention or boundaries. Punishment is vengeance. Punishment means that kind of uh, I invoke pain upon you because you made me uncomfortable. It's very rarely the only way to prevent the same behavior, right? Like for example, uh, mm, the like if you can deliver punishment, I blanked out an example, but if you can deliver punishment without any anger, uh, you probably wouldn't even describe it as punishment. You see, it's like for example, do I punish my cat? Never. But can I lock it inside? Sure. Can I physically restrain its movements when I need to? Sure. Can I take it and move it? Or I don't know if my cat is interfering with my work on the laptop. Can I move it away? Sure. None of that is punishment. Punishment would be hitting it, right? So obviously, I'm not saying that it's always wrong to hit your child. I mean, if your child hits you, he hit it back. Just of course, with the appropriate force, right? Uh, there's a lesson to that also, right? But it's not punishment. You see, punishment is something very different. Punishment is attempts to mold behavior by making another living being, which is usually much weaker than you, to be afraid of you, to be afraid of the consequence. So it's very difficult for me to come up with an example of punishment that is justified, that could be still described as punishment. It's hard to answer such questions in abstract. So if you would like to talk about it further, I would encourage you to actually ask a concrete question. Hajar says, you continue. So even direct physical danger is probably probability-based situation, which makes them more complicated. Well, yeah, that's a continuation of your question. Okay. Andres says, Artem, I have a question about homosexuality. Osho suggests that it is a perversion. Is that true? Do all become straight in enlightenment? It is true. But there's a big but. First of all, the very same Osho said that he was speaking once to a person who was deeply confused and who said that he's homosexual and he's Catholic and he cannot reconcile the two. And Osho's response was, drop away Catholicism. Don't worry about your homosexual. What's wrong with loving? What's wrong with love? If you can't love a woman, love a man. What's the problem? Catholicism is your problem, not homosexuality. So was something like that. I don't quite remember this exchange, but in detail. but it was something like that. So I am sort of a very similar stance. First of all, you can describe a lot of things as perversion. You can basically, if you look at an average person's sexuality, it is perverted to a very large extent. Almost everyone's sexuality is perverted to one extent or another. You can describe most kinks as perversion. Certainly, you can describe BDSM as perversion. The dominance submission games you can describe as perversion. But we have to look at what does it mean for something to be perverted, right? So in the context of sexuality, every sort of perversion, every kink is just something that by association helps you get aroused, right? It's just something that is interlinked in your psyche with sexual arousal. And of course, we could say, well, if submission is interlinked in your psyche with sexual arousal, or aggression, for example, physical aggression is interlinked in your psyche with sexual arousal, that's perversion, sure. But perversion is just a pejorative term. It's an accusatory, it's a judgmental term, right? So when you say I am perverted, it means there's something wrong with me that needs to be fixed. But you can't fix yourself this way, right? You can say that we all carry perverted reactions to our trauma. You can say ego is perversion from this perspective, but it cannot be fixed by denial. It cannot be fixed by rejection, right? And so whatever impulses you have, especially when it comes to sexuality, the key is to accept them and explore them and practice them in a safe, consensual environment. That's why, for example, even very perverted things like BDSM can be tremendously spiritually significant. Because if you are the kind of person in whom the sexual arousal is intertwined with domination or even physical aggression, and you meet another sort of person in whom sexual arousal is intertwined with submission or even being humiliated, then by consensually and mutually exploring these parts of yourself, not only you can get a tremendous amount of sexual pleasure, but you're also opening up to yourself and accepting both yourself and the partner to a much greater degree than it was ever possible before. The important parts in this equation is safety and consent. And of course, it applies to homosexuality even to a greater extent, because a big part of homosexuality is love, right? I actually would not consider, let's say, a man who had sex with other men a homosexual. Like this is to me a laughable definition of the term. In my definition of the term, homosexual, if you're truly a homosexual, what defines a homosexual, if you're a man, for example, and you want to call yourself homosexual, it means that you fall in love with other men, not have sex with, fall in love. And you don't fall in love with women. That's what it means to be a homosexual, right? So if you fall in love with women, or if you fall in love with both, that's a different story. But if you don't fall, if you like having sex with men, but you don't fall in love with them, I wouldn't even describe you as homosexual. So every love is beautiful. What does it matter if you fall in love with a man or with a woman? What does it matter if you have sex with a man and it gives you sexual pleasure? What does it matter if it's safe, if it's consensual, if there's mutual love and mutual enjoyment? It doesn't matter at all. You're attracted to what you're attracted to. You also don't control your attraction, if you noticed, right? So we don't control our perversions. We don't control our kinks, right? Because they are, you can say yes, and this would even apply to homosexuality, actually, in truth, to some degree. So you could say that our perversions and kinks are a consequence of our trauma and suppression. Sure, but you do not control them anyway, right? You cannot just reject them by saying that. All Even if they do change, as Osho suggested, and I actually agree with that, over time, even if it does change over time, it's a natural process, and it's a consequence of love. It's a consequence of acceptance. Like, for example, I used to be into BDSM. I haven't practiced BDSM for like 6 or 7 years. I don't think I ever will anymore. To me, this is just not attractive at all anymore, because I don't have the pent up aggression and the dominance that I used to have, that was intertwined, a conditioned sort of male aggressive dominance of kind of owning a female, right? So I don't have that. So when I exercise behaviors like this, uh, whereas previously it helped me get aroused. So during the kind of BDSM phase of my life, which didn't last very long, but now it doesn't help me doesn't help me get aroused at all, right? So it's sort of it naturally falls off, right? So every sort of perversion or kink, regardless if we're talking about we're talking about sexuality, or we're talking about just psychology, even the need for validation, argumentativeness, stubbornness, procrastination, you name it, all of the sort of difficult psychological struggles that we struggle with in the dream state, they cannot be erased, they cannot be rejected, they can only be loved and experienced. And if they are something that arose out of conditioning, that they naturally and effortlessly fall off when it's time for them to fall off, basically when you don't need them anymore. So I would never give an advice to some homosexual, like homosexuality is perversion, you should try sleeping with women. This is nonsense, right? I would say embrace it, embrace yourself, embrace your love to other men, or if you're a woman, to other women. Enjoy it, but at the same time, uh, just like I would say to a straight man who has some homosexual impulses and fantasies, just like I would say to them, don't reject them, explore them, experiment if you want, you know uh, even watch some porn if you want, if you feel drawn to it, if you feel drawn to some homosexual impulses, right? So just in the same vein, I would say to a straight man, if you feel attracted to a woman, don't panic. It's absolutely possible. You can be attracted to both men and women. You don't choose your attraction. There is no need to put yourself into some sort of a box. Like, every box is difficult to get out of. So if you put yourself into a box and you say, well, I'm straight, it means I only like this. And then if I find this man beautiful, then, oh my god, I feel threatened. Oh, what if am I a homo now? Oh my god, such a big, the same thing applies to homosexual. You if you find some woman suddenly beautiful or physically attractive, or if you start falling in love with a woman, don't feel threatened. uh, all identity is false identity. Maybe now you like girls, now you like boys, maybe now you like them both. That actually doesn't matter. But what matters is becoming true to yourself. What matters is not denying your kind of uh, attraction when it comes to love and sexuality. You cannot deny it. So it's a sort of a there's a tendency to straightness, yes, because it's more natural, and quite uh, a large part of homosexual impulse is an impulse for safety, because the closer, kind of the more familiar the person you have sex with to you, the safer it's perceived, because we all perceive sex as kind of threatening. There's a lot of shame associated with sex. We're afraid. We're afraid to be naked. We're afraid to be intimate. So there's psychologically, for the ego, there is a sort of implicit threat in sex. And so it kind of stands to reason that this threat is perceived as less when it's the same gender. It's actually the basis for pedophilia also, believe it or not. So kind of the attraction to very young, pre-puberty and stuff like that is the kind of is the fear of real adult intimacy, and the yearning for the safety of childhood, basically. So is this perverted? You decide. So for as long as you don't for as long as you engage in safe and consensual intercourse with adults, you decide what is perverted, what is not. From my perspective, nothing is. But yes, I mean, just because of that, because it's the safety aspect of it is a big part of how those things develop. Yes, there is some tendency to straightness, but there's also a tendency of just expanding limitations, right? So you will absolutely find people who, on the spiritual path, admitted to their homosexual tendencies and actually maybe explored it a little bit. Or they found that they can be attracted to multiple people, not just one, as they thought that the only proper way is to be attracted to one person. They can be attracted to multiple people, or they can be attracted to the genders that they would never think that they would. They maybe begin to appreciate the beauty of men if they're men, or of women if they're women, and feel some sexual attraction towards them. So you will find these people too. So it's much more about expanding your preconceived ideas about whom you should like, about what your sexuality should be, about what is a perversion or kink, what is a perversion, a bad perversion, and what is not, what is good and what is bad. Expanding your kind of preconceived ideas about how you should be, and loving yourself the way you are every given second, every given minute. And then from that, all sorts of changes happen. And if you are, for example, in the stage of your life or the spiritual path, when you exploring your homosexual tendencies or ideas or fantasies, and I would say, well, yes, enlightenment is a path to straightness, that would be doing a disservice to you. I would be kind of confusing you, actually. There is no, for as long as you become more intimate, for as long as you become more truthful, for as long as you can become more accepting of yourself, there is no wrong path to take. You see, you're not doing anything wrong. You're moving into the right direction. So I hope it answers your question. And please, again, feel free to have a in-person conversation about this, or follow up with some messages. Okay, let's see what else. Kinho asks, can you touch more upon what you said earlier about the paradox of how the totally ego-identified pre-enlightened state can resemble the post-enlightened state? Can the mind still wander in both? No, it's not. It doesn't happen because the mind wanders in both. It doesn't. So the completely enlightened person is completely unrecognizable, not because his mind wanders in both, right? No, his mind doesn't wander at all. The reason is that uh, enlightenment is shedding away of not untruth, right? It's it's not something that you acquire. It's not something that you attain. Uh, the enlightened state is the natural state. So it's only a matter of something you drop, right? It's a matter of something you lose. So in other words, I don't know anything that you don't know. Uh, you know all of the things I know. Otherwise, it would be actually possible to guide you because I'm guiding you towards your own insight. I don't want you to just take my words as gospel. I want you to see for yourself where it leads you. I want you to verify my words in your own experience. So I don't know anything that you don't. Uh, and from this perspective, I am absolutely the same as any of you, right? So I'm just a human. So I'm just a human. I have my body. I eat. I get hungry. I eat. I get tired. There's physical pain. Uh, the Unfortunately, in our culture, to be human is to have an ego. Like to be human is to suffer. When we're speaking about humanity, we mostly talk about our contradictions, about our sort of um troubled nature, about the darkness, about the jealousy, about our complicated nature, and things like that. But from the kind of day to day perspective, uh, in day to day conversations, unless you live with someone, so living with me is a different story. But unless you live with someone, people don't really show that much of it. They don't show their inner struggle, right? So most people in their day-to-day life, they kind of behave, they pretend because there's a lot of pain inside, and I did, and I pretended for years and decades. But they kind of pretend to be just a normal human. Well, something bad happened. Well, that's sad. Something good happened. Well, that's great. Now I'm hungry. I want to do this. This is interesting to me. This is not interesting to me. So from that perspective, a completely enlightened person would be absolutely the same. Just normal, relaxed, chill human. Now, the what is lacking in the complete enlightened state is the visibility of enlightenment, which is a manifestation of going through a part of the spiritual process. Like for example, if you are abiding in the unconditional love, if you have just found your being and you identify with the being and you're sort of all very loving and very understanding and very empathetic, this can be very, very visible. But the reason it is very, very visible is because you are overwhelmed by the experience. This experience is new to you. This experience is the front sort of your experience. It is a big kind of, it is the focus of your attention, and you also want to show it to everyone, right? So people who kind of embody unconditional love, for example, they can be easily identified. So something similar happens with embodying the meaninglessness, deathlessness. The meaninglessness, death, emptiness, right? So when you're sort of in a state where, like nothing matters, I'm a serene Buddha, then it's somewhat new. It is very much, it is important to you. It is what the focus is on, and you also want to show it to other people, however subtly and unconsciously, and things like that. So people who are undergoing the transformation can be identified, but once this has been thoroughly integrated, and both in love and emptiness and other things are just nothing but the facets of the whole, then it's not visible. And the reason it's not visible is because you don't posture with it. You don't go around and sort of presenting yourself as like unconditionally loving or super serene and equanimous. You don't care about being seen as enlightened, basically. So you become very, very ordinary again. Uh, but it's not because like the mind jumps or you suffer the same. It's not like that. It's actually more because people pretend to be ordinary. It's like, like imagine that everyone would honestly speak their mind. So every human would be absolutely honest about what they feel and what they think. Well, first of all, society would not last very long. So there would be like conflict. You would not be able to take a cab without getting into some sort of emotional conflict. And then in this scenario, yes, an enlightened person would be very, very different. So the reason that you cannot actually identify an enlightened person, and you can only identify people who undergo the transformation, is because everyone pretends to be normal, basically. So when you're just normal, you just like everyone else, right? But when you sort of very much out of the norm, and if you're like exuding unconditional love, or you're like super serene and you sit in your ass all day long and didn't do anything, well, that attracts attention. So Osho actually understood it too. So he wrote that a complete enlightenment is completely invisible. That like once you go over a certain threshold, he said, the person starts slipping out of your hands. So you might still remember who he is if you witnessed his transformation, right? But if you've never witnessed his transformation, he will appear completely ordinary to you. So there's a big cosmic joke in that, because part of the reasons why people who are still undergoing the transformation are identifiable is because they want to be identified, right? So they want to show. And so there's some sort of a cruel cosmic justice in that once you're really not special, then no one else will also think you're special. so okay. Bogdan says, I can feel becoming a mind-made character when I'm falling asleep. When you begin dreaming. Yes. And then usually sort of as you just begin dreaming, as you drift off to sleep, you can kind of still witness. You can even like begin witnessing the dream, and then you're like, whoa, what is that? And it will disappear, and then we'll start again, and sooner or later it will kind of take you. And the more aware you are, the longer this period will be, and the sort of deeper you will see into how the dreaming begins. And if you very much aware, then usually by this stage you would not have any awareness of the body. You will just experience yourself as spaceless consciousness, spaceless infinite consciousness, in which this dreams begins. So that's why I also say, with regards to jhanic states and things like that, enlightened people experience jhanic states every time they go to sleep. So yeah, I mean, it's good that you have noticed how it happens. So kind of falling asleep meditatively is actually a very good practice. So when you go to sleep, just don't just wait for this. For most people in the separate state, the way that they go to sleep is they go to bed and they just wait, or they start thinking about it and they just wait. And usually by the morning they don't even remember how they fell asleep. It just happens abruptly. So falling asleep meditatively is a very good practice. So basically just close your eyes, and you can focus on the breath, or you can simply witness the mind, but don't like try to fall asleep, or don't wait for the sleep to happen, but just relax the body and witness the mind. And you will begin seeing how the falling asleep actually begins to happen. This can be very interesting. The interesting thing about it also is that the body rests the same, but the mind not necessarily. So people can feel very exhausted after a long emotional meditation session, for example, because like processing all of this suppressed emotion, it also takes a toll on the body The mind is restless. A big part of the process of enlightenment is uncovering and witnessing the restlessness of the mind. So it can be tiring, right? But physically, the body rests the same in dream and meditation. The in sleep and meditation, the tiredness comes from the exposing the pains and discomforts of the mind. Uh, so if you like, for example, if you meditate instead of sleeping, and you notice that your body's tired, don't necessarily blame the technique. Ask yourself, has it been also emotionally intense, right? Because if your meditation was emotionally intense or unpleasant on the level of the mind, like maybe you saw a lot of repeating thoughts, or kind of too much mind activity, like just unpleasant, then this alone can bring up tiredness. The truth is that generally speaking, there's not much difference between sleep and meditation. Okay, Kinho asks, is the state of unity consciousness an inevitable part of the path? Or can one exhaust the dream state without having experienced oneness? I think so. Yes, I think it is, because you see, if you are in the state of oneness, you would not relate. You would not be able to relate to the description. So if you're not identified with the ego, basically, so you would not be able to relate to the description to the state of oneness, because that's your only state. So you have never experienced separateness. But you would not. You would also never seek enlightenment. So you would not be speaking to me. You would not be asking this question. It would all just seem as absurd. So if you're asking this question, if you're seeking, if you're suffering, then there's definitely the state of separateness. To what extent, it doesn't matter. It can fluctuate. It can be to deeper extent, to less extent. It can fluctuate back and forth. It doesn't matter. Which means that on the way home, you will experience the states of oneness. So the only question is it going to be like, for example, in my case, where it basically kind of collapsed in the state of oneness, and I never emerged from it, and I spent kind of a few years in it until it sufficiently integrated, then it stopped being a prominent part of my experience. Or you might experience the same state in a kind of temporary episodes, right? So you might experience, like, for example, you might meditate, or take a psychedelic medicine, or do some other spiritual practice, and go through some resistance, some insight, some emotional release, and then afterwards, like for an hour or two, you may experience an elevated feeling of oneness and connectedness, right? So as the sort of the opposite of what you just worked through. So you work through something, and then more oneness and interconnectedness has been uncovered, has been brought up and experienced. The same applies to peace, for example, by the way, the peace and emptiness. And even in my case, right, just because I sort of fell into it so abruptly, a lot of this integration happened during this year when I continuously and permanently abode in it. But even then, some remaining subtle conditioning as it fell off, I from time to time felt a temporary elevated feeling of oneness. So the feeling of oneness and interconnectedness, when it's obvious, when it is present, is a consequence of shedding away, of chopping away some of the beliefs that keep you separate. If it happened very intensely and kind of thoroughly, then you may be yanked into it, and you will spend a lot of time there. But every even little thing gives rise to a feeling of deeper oneness and interconnectedness. So you can actually, it's quite possible to never sort of jump into it like I did, but the whole spiritual path is just practice, 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 and there's a deeper oneness after a practice session. Maybe there's like a feeling of oneness that took like an hour or day or two, and then you continue practice. And so it's possible to sort of work through it like this. It doesn't have to be an abrupt identity shift. But I don't think that it is possible to avoid it, because it's the other side of separateness, right? So if there's separateness, then there's also oneness. And as you drop away the separateness, it doesn't matter how abruptly. It can be slow process, but if it doesn't matter how fully. But if you drop it away, then you will invariably, as a consequence of this dropping away, you will experience some elevated oneness and interconnectedness. So I think that yes, the answer to your question is yes, it is an inevitable part of the path, but it can take different forms. Ignoring can be punishment. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a comment to Hajar. Yeah, so if you ignore a child out of your bitterness or contempt, or then it is actually punishment. Yes. Okay, so it's been an hour and 36 minutes. Alex, you're actually the only one in the guest room. I highly encourage everyone to speak from the guest room. I mean, just like I highly encourage everyone to participate in Satsangs, retreats, or come see me in person if you can. The more intimate the interaction is, the better. So Alex, I can see you in the guest room, but I probably only have like 10 minutes tops, because it's been already an hour and 40 minutes. So do you still want to talk for 5 or 10 minutes? So I can't hear you, so say, do this or this. Okay. Hi, Alex.
Hey, I was just trying to say if you're tired, or if you're just
a little, yeah, but I mean 5 to 10 minutes is okay. But yeah, I'm a little tired. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I've been crying today.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I was looking at a video of a gym trainer, someone that used to help me out with my body. And I've always thought he's very like arrogant and very cocky. And I noticed as I was watching the video that arrogance is it's like self-hatred in disguise. He was compensating for pain. He didn't really think all the things about himself that he was saying. He was hurting. And I know this because this is how I feel about myself too. And this is why I talk so much.
Yes, you're right.
It's just lies on top of lies.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I've been seeing.
Good. Congratulations. Yes, arrogance is overcompensation for insecurity. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And it's the same thing, being humble as well. It's the same thing, over humbleness.
That's right.
We just don't want to be.
Absolutely right.
We just won't be how we are because we learned to be every other way.
Yes, because you are really seeing things as they are, beginning to see things as they are right now. Yes, good for you, and that's difficult. Yes, and there's a lot of tears and pain, and it's ugly to see it in ourselves. Humble people are also arrogant. Humbleness is arrogant reverse, because they are proud of being humble. They want to be more humble than other. So they think like, I'm humble, and that's good. I'm better than you. So it's like you can collect a lot of humble people together and ask, raise your hand if you think you're the most humble.
Right. And it's become a false sense of safety. That's what it is. It's a false sense of safety
Yes,
because
both
the
arrogance and humility in this way. That the true humility is openness. True humility
yes,
is willing to be proven wrong.
yes,
That's true humility.
yes,
Not hiding your accomplishments. Because you see, I mean, if you want to be humble in a traditional sense, it means that you understand your accomplishments very well. You just want to hide them, but you're still pride. You're still proud. You're just even more proud that you don't show anyone, that you hide them from anyone. But you know
and,
what you're hiding. Yes, true humility
and,
doesn't hide anything. Yeah.
and people rely on that. They rely
Yes.
on that as their way
Yes.
of being, as
Yes.
their connection to life, as
Yes.
their connection to themselves. They rely on that
They rely on that as a way to be accepted.
as a way to be
Because
accepted.
both arrogant people and humble people, of course, it's more pleasant but arrogant people also want to be accepted. They want to kind of show their value, right? So they want to show to everyone that they are worthy, and but more importantly to themselves. Yes.
Because they fundamentally don't believe they are.
Yes.
It hides the tears.
Yes.
Arrogance just hides tears.
that's
Arrogance and vanity hide your tears. That's it.
that's right.
Um, quick other thing. So when I started this path, you told me it was all about feeling, and I
Hmm.
just kept feeling. At
Hmm.
some point, it got really confusing and intense to the point where I felt like things were getting worse. But
Oh yeah.
as I let go into it more, I did realize that I was becoming more open to the experience.
That's right.
However, I want to tell you something. The thing that opened this up for me was two things. It was the retreat, the great release of emotion, but then what stabilized this great openness, I guess you could say, was practicing seeing things as they actually are. So when I would have a thought or an emotion arise, instead of just reacting, which in a way is kind of feeling,
Projection.
which was also resisting, instead of doing all that, just resting and
Yes.
seeing it arise, in staying with it, I was able to see it resolve back into the same space of what is always already here, of what I always already am. And ever since that recognition, the whole sense of enlightenment, the whole sense of needing to do this to avoid that, to change anything has just, it's gone away. And it's just this. That's just
That's right.
this. My
That's
question, I guess, was, I actually wrote it down to make sure it was concise for us. Do you ever think, in any case, it's important to encourage recognition of what I just mentioned, of awareness, I guess you could say, alongside openness to experience, and not just overly emphasize one over the other? Because you said a lot of people talk about consciousness, but they don't talk about the human. A lot of people talk about you talk about the human,
uh
try to kind of,
how it's what does it look like in practice?
how do you, like, for me,
Yeah.
like how I practice now?
Well, yeah. Like basically, you're asking me: is X an important? Can X be an important uh, aspect of practice? And then X is like recognizing awareness. But how does it look like? Like recognizing awareness is
Yeah.
is just a word.
Yeah.
So what exactly do you do, right? Is it just a thought, right? So how important, like if you ask me how important it is to have a thought, I am awareness, like you can make yourself a little sticky note on which you will write I am awareness. No, that wouldn't be important, right? So what do you do precisely with your attention or something
Yeah.
else? Like what is the movement in practice that fosters this recognition, so to say? Can you
Yes.
describe it experientially?
Yes. So I didn't come up with this myself. This is from a teacher named Ziji Rinpoche, which is a Tibetan name in the tradition of Dzogchen. So she said
I
that
only want to speak about your experience.
you don't want to speak about
I
what?
only want to speak about your experience.
Yes, this is my experience. So
okay. So then don't use her description.
I started listening to her.
If this is your experience, then
Yes,
use
it
your
is.
own words.
I started listening to her though.
Okay.
This is what encouraged this recognition for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she said that you don't need to do anything. Nothing needs to be done. You just rest. When you see
then you answered your own question. Then it's not important.
When you see an emotion, no. And in this resting is the recognition. It just becomes obvious.
So what do you do to just rest?
Yes. So what I do to just rest is whenever there's any thought, emotion, anything in consciousness, I see it just as it is, stay with the experience as it is by resting with it. And then
hold on, wait. What is the difference between staying with experience by resting with it and staying with experience without resting with it? What exactly? What you see, practice is active.
That's a good question.
Right? So what exactly do you do?
Yeah. So you notice when you're not resting. you notice when you're grasping, when you're reacting, when you're resisting, when you're doing this. Instead, you rest. So as soon as
reaction is resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same as allow.
It is.
So basically, you notice. So there is a sensation.
Yeah.
You notice that there is also a resistance to the sensation, and it creates disturbance. It creates unrest.
Yes.
And you relax the resistance to the sensation by allowing the sensation just to be.
Just to be. Yes.
Well, it's the same. It's the same practice. It's one and the same. There are no two aspects of it. It's just one.
It's interesting because it's
like, when you word it in a way, when you there's this temptation when you see it worded in a way that you have never heard before, for example, or you see it worded in a way that feels much more kind of accurate as a description of your current experience. And of course, your experience changes. Your experience evolves. There's much more acceptance now in your experience, right? And so when you see a description that is much more reflective, that is much more accurate of what is going on right now, there's a tendency to say, that's the right description. And I was doing it wrong before. But actually, a deeper thing, like when we inquired a little bit, now we see that we're talking about the same thing. You see?
Yeah. I will say though, but hearing it like that, hearing it in different ways can exude or can help one discover, can help.
Yes, but that's the trick, right? You can only hear it, like really hear it, when you either have discovered it yourself or you're close to discovering it.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So this is why I say it's a hypothesis basically for me that it seems that it's important to not only just encourage the feeling, encourage opening up to experience, but also encourage seeing things as they are. And at one point, right, seeing things as they are.
But that's the same thing. Like you can distinguish between them yourself.
Okay. But they are different from the perspective of the ego. That is, I think, what I'm wrestling with here. From the perspective of the ego, when you said just feel, a lot of times looking back, the truth is I was resisting. I was resisting experience.
Well, of course.
Just feeling.
But you lose resistance through feeling.
And
you lose resistance through exposure.
You do. Through opening up to the experience, you see that there's nothing to resist about.
Through continued exposure to difficult experience, you also lose resistance, and then the the kind of, and then this place from which it all arises and into which it all dissolves, it becomes visible deeper and deeper, and you start identifying with it more than with an experience itself, than with a painful experience, right?
Yes.
The painful experience becomes less painful,
Right.
and so the descriptions that emphasize this place become more relevant. They become more sort of reflective.
Yes.
But someone who hasn't yet kind of, you see, the thing is that just feel or notice how you reject the feeling, notice how you distract yourself from the feeling, and then put the attention on the feeling again. For someone who hasn't found this place, is a much easier description to relate than,
Yes. No, I agree.
just accept as it is and go back to the place of rest.
I
They,
agree.
they, they wouldn't be able. So the importance, I place the importance on following, on having instructions that are actually possible to follow.
That's
Right,
good.
because there's, so in confusion in spirituality, there's like a lot of confusion between instructions that are possible to follow and descriptions of states. Like, for example, if some teacher says, just be, that's actually aspirational. That can create an emotional experience in itself. That sounds as profound, but that's not an instruction, right? You cannot follow it, right? So it's more of a description of a state, right? And some sort of an encouragement to practice, and an encouragement, right? So there's a mix in spirituality between those two. So a lot of things that sort of look like an instruction on the surface is actually not possible to follow until you're already there. And just be is a very good example of that, right? When you know how to just be, then it's possible, right? Then it's just a reminder, right? But when you don't know, it's completely meaningless. So there's a lot of this things, and it's easy to sort of think that some description would be much more effective to other people when you already get it yourself. So it's the same point that I made about making focusing on self-realization and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what you see. If you look at the spiritual marketplace, the success is dismal. The success rate is dismal. Like, most people who work with spiritual teachers, most people who follow spiritual teaching, most people who lived in Osho's Rajneesh Puram never got enlightened. The success is almost zero, right? So I think it has to do a lot with regards to that condition and the depth of clarity of the teacher, because you can talk about the self-realized state as a pointing, but as a pointing, it's like, it's aspirational. It's very hard for the mind to decipher some sort of thing to practice with it. And in my experience, the only thing that you have to practice with in meditation is the movement of your attention, right? So either it moves into somewhere or it moves away from somewhere, and you can actually practice, and that's the only spiritual practice, that's the only spiritual tool you have, is the movement of your attention, right? So if you say, put your attention back into this place of being and rest, if the person is not connected with this place, it's absolutely, like, he can't do it.
Yeah. And that's not quite what I said. Not a place of rest, but just resting when you notice any kind of tension, thought, feeling, anything stirring.
Removing resistance, basically.
What?
Removing resistance, basically.
Yeah, relaxing from resistance. By literally, okay, so what she says, and I see it this way too, I don't know what other words to say it as. Rest as the immediate perception. So
how?
okay, so
That's what I'm trying to point to. This is
Right,
not an
no,
instruction.
good.
It's a description of a state. If you're in a state where you can rest as immediate perception, you're already in the state. It's a description. If you're not in this state, what's the instruction? How? In my experience, the only thing that you can do is you notice that you run away, you notice that there is resistance,
Yes.
and in this moment of noticing, you redirect the attention back. That's the same as saying just feel, right? And it's the same, by the way, when you start.
Wait. You said you redirect the attention back.
Yes.
I would say no, not with this part. Not redirect the attention back. Just rest. Literally do nothing as it arises. So you're completely open to the experience. You're letting it be there as it is, but also not redirecting anything, not doing anything. Just letting that experience be as it is, and then paying attention to how this experience arises, but also resolves back into what's already here. It already.
Paying attention to how this experience arises and resolves without looking at it?
No, by looking at it. Yeah, looking at it.
That's the attention.
Yes. But I would not give the... Okay. Yes, you're right.
We're having a different conversation, my friend.
It's hard with words. It's hard because, words are...
Because that's not the crux of our conversation. The crux of our conversation is that you tend to think, well, you think right now that there are forms of practice which would be more beneficial or better than what I recommended. That's the crux of our conversation. That's why it's difficult, not because words are difficult.
Okay, I don't mean it quite that way. I mean, I see the value in opening up to experience and feeling. My point is that maybe it would be better to have that alongside the encouragement of recognition, alongside the encouragement of seeing things as they are, which would include, I guess, when you're like talking.
You just said, I don't exactly quite see it this way, but that's exactly how I see it.
Wait, that's exactly how you see it.
It's you communicate in a very strange way, my friend.
Okay, how did I do that?
Well, I maybe you can rewatch it sometimes, but basically, when I described what this conversation is about, you said, "Well, no, I don't think that's what it's about. What it's about is," and then you described exactly what I said.
What I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to just say that what I'm saying here is more beneficial than what you're saying. I'm saying
that's not what I meant.
Okay.
Your main point is that there are some elements of practice that are missing from my advice. That's your main point, and my counterpoint to that. Yes. So for example, here's a great comment, right? She's right. I watched two people saying the same thing for the last 10 minutes. She's absolutely right. So that is your point, actually. And my point is that it's just saying no, that it's just saying it's just talking about the same thing in different words.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in different words. Yes, I agree. In different words. Okay. Yeah, okay. That was the main thing. When I had heard just feel, I interpreted that as resist, essentially, unconsciously.
That's not what I meant. Yes.
Yeah, right.
And I actually am very clear usually with what I meant. And I'm very clear with
okay,
that there's going to be resistance, that you notice the resistance and you...
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe my thinking that what you teach is that there's something missing from what you teach is just my previous misinterpretation of your teaching.
Yes.
Before now. Okay.
And that's inevitable. You cannot completely. It would actually happen with anyone. I mean, I tend to think that I'm sort of more down to earth and clearer than other teachers, but that's my opinion. But regardless of what teacher you work with, the misinterpretation of teaching will always happen. Always, it
Yeah.
cannot not happen, because
Right.
if it will not, if it doesn't happen, you don't need any teaching.
I
It's
heard you
like,
say that. Yeah.
Buddha himself rejected all the Buddhism. Like, even if you go the Buddhist path, then you will acquire all the Buddhist concepts. You will work through all the stages of the Buddhist path, and then you will reject the Buddhism.
Mhm.
So it's invariable. It happens all the time.
Okay. So I don't mean any disrespect
Yes,
at
I
all
do.
to you.
I know.
Okay.
It's okay. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
Okay.
no
All right.
problem.
Well, thank you. This is taking way longer than 5-10 minutes. Go enjoy yourself.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we also have a new person here. I don't think that I ever spoke to you. Hi, Vera.
Hey,
How's it going?
good. We've met in person. I've been to your house. I don't know if you remember me.
No, I don't. What the
Yeah.
hell? Let me look at you. Oh, did you come alone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was
Wow,
2
what
years
was I
ago, 3
doing?
years ago. I'm the
Oh,
one
that
that
was a
got
long
your
time ago.
yeah,
Jeez, I don't remember you at
that
all.
saved your
What's
old
wrong with me?
post on
I'm
Reddit.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I so I've been following you on Twitter, and it's kind of coincidental. I recently joined Twitter uh a month ago, and I've been enjoying it a lot, warts and all. Um, and I've been happy to see you engaging, um, because I think that there's a lot of people on there that are pretty much in the right area generally about awakening. They just don't have a lot of pointing.
Yes.
So if you want to give your thoughts on Twitter overall, that's cool. But also, you said something on a Twitter thread once where you said your perception is objective. Do you recall saying that?
Mine?
Yeah. Hmm.
To the extent that it can be, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And
It's
so
like
if you
there are limits to objectivity, which are so to the extent that the senses can be objective,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like, there are limits to objectivity because senses are fundamentally subjective. So like my vision works very differently from the vision of a mouse, for example.
Mhm.
So, but with regards to other people, right? If we just assume that we more or less see the same way, we more or less hear the same way, most of our subjectivity and the emotional biases that we show, that we have, it comes from our desire to be right. Basically, it comes from us suffering.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that I'm clairvoyant either. I'm not.
Gotcha.
So I don't know what's going on in your head. I don't know what you feel, but I know what I see. It's not. So basically, you could put it this way: what I see is not distorted by what I feel. And for most people, and including myself previously, that's exactly the case. So what you see is distorted by what you feel and by what you think. And in my case, not. But like, if we take it into the realm of, is there such a thing as objectivity, because we can only perceive reality through the senses, this is also true. It's not like you seeing the atoms there, you're still seeing your own perception.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had an LSD trip yesterday, and I've been going through a very difficult time in a relationship, and I kind of had already processed a lot of the pain because it was so intense. It was already psychedelic enough. I didn't really need the LSD. Um, uh, and it it made me realize that there's almost a mechanism with emotional awakening where you kind of have to be pushed to an edge where you have nothing else to lose.
That's right. Yes.
And
You have to be ready to lose everything. Yeah.
yeah, I would, and that's kind of why I took a large dose, larger than I normally would, because I was kind of signaling like I'm not afraid. Well, I am afraid, but I don't care. I want to just see everything. I need to see everything as best as I can. Yeah.
The intent for truth, just like we talked about previously. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And then yeah, like living authentically. Um a lot of that came up. And then I always have this thing where it's like I always feel like my eyes are crossed, but not literally, like like my inner gaze or my focus or something is just off. Probably because it is with like ego and mind pulling you in a million different ways, but um
Can it
I just
be a kind
wonder.
of a feeling, a perception, or some sort of a uh, kind of? Can it be just a feeling of sort of looking inwards in some way, or it's not related to that, or does it feel kind of physical?
It feels physical. It feels like there's like I don't mean, I mean this only in because I don't have a better word. Like there's something slightly demented.
Does it like when you go over the come up of the LSD trip, you go over the peak of it, the emotional release, and you're some sort of in a plateau stage where
Mm,
do you still feel this way?
mm, yeah. Not the
Mhm.
entire time, but yeah. I think there's when it happened, I was called to sit with it, and it might be a tension thing.
Oh, so it's not permanent. It comes and goes.
It becomes I fear it is always there, and I'm never fully aware of it except when I'm tripping, and but I always fear that it's always there and kind of ruining relationships or ruining interactions because I'm just not like 100%, present and connected with what's actually going on.
Well, that's a little bit different from having the ice crossed or something, because the connection uh, and being engaged in what's going on is in sort of a inner movement,
Mhm.
and of course, when there's a lot of inner stuff to work with, and we pull to meditate, and we are pulled inwards, we pull to witness our own minds. It's difficult to be present. It's difficult to be engaged. So the less we suffer, the more naturally and easy the engagement becomes. You can't kind of force yourself to be present, while you actually pulled inwards and you want to investigate your own experience. It's not possible to do both, right? That's why during the spiritual awakening, people can be very difficult, or just being engaged in the world can be very difficult.
Yeah.
It's just like being engaged or have a conversation with people while tripping on LSD. Some parts of the trip you will find it hard to do.
Yeah. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about. Thank you for posting on Twitter. It's been a delight to see you on my timeline.
Oh, absolutely, it's my pleasure. And by the way, yeah, you've been to my house, so you're local, right? You're in California.
No, it was a visit. I was just traveling.
Oh,
Yeah, I have
I
a
see.
sister in the Bay Area, so I came down and
Oh, I
met
see.
you and Katya.
I'm so surprised I don't remember you. I don't remember names, but I usually remember faces very well.
I
It's
got a
it's so
different
strange.
haircut. Yeah. So
Ah,
I was a Reddit user when you first posted on Reddit.
what was your username?
Vera or Very good.
Oh, you're very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I know you, of course. You're
Yeah.
very good. Oh, cool. It's so cool to see you. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
I've
showing
been
up.
lurking. I've been lurking a lot in all my spiritual communities, but I'm still present. I'm just lurking.
Okay. Yes. So I'm sorry. We ran over 2 hours. I've never did a broadcast as long as this, and I'm somewhat tired. But please, like, if you, I remember you very well. Yes, if you want to speak to me for longer, yes, just please schedule a one-on-one with me. You don't have to pay if you can't. It's absolutely fine. You can just write me a Discord message or something. But we can certainly speak personally one-on-one about anything that's going on with you. I remember you very well. Yeah.
Thanks, Artem.
You're most welcome. And yeah, I confirm what you said about your insight. That yes, yeah, there's the willingness to let go, and the willingness to experience all of it and to kind of go over the edge is
Yeah.
It's real. Yes.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, my friend.
Thank you. Much love to you.
Thank you. Same to you, my friend. All right. This has been a long one. So okay. That's it. I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Love you all. Love you very much. Bye. Bye. I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Bye, everybody.